and welcome to a new episode on the Singing Insider podcast. I am so happy, so grateful, and so excited that you're here because today's episode is really a special one. And I know I say that every time, but we have a very special guest, Megan Hillukka, and is she's a rapid resolution therapy specialist. That's a mouthful. But basically, she helps people get over anxiety in their lives. And I had a conversation with her yesterday because she invited me on her podcast after we connected in a coaching program. And we had such an amazing conversation about singing, but also about like getting over our fears. And I thought this is so valuable for the singers that I'm working with and for everyone who, wants to know more about singing. So hopefully that's you if you're listening to this. Um, and so that's the reason I brought her on. I said, well, I want to return the favor, and I think you have so much value to add to our listeners as well. Would you be open to hop on a call and record a conversation? And then she said yes, and here we are. So as you can hear, my nose is all stuffed up. I have a big cold. So you'll have to deal with that throughout the whole episode. I'm so sorry. But definitely listen to Megan and what she has to say, because what she's going to be sharing will help you to open up your mind into finding ways to overcome any anxiety when singing, whether that's to be applied when you're performing or under the shower, with singing when someone is home, for example. There's amazing things to discover in these conversations. So without any further ado, here is my conversation with Megan. Well, hi, Megan. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. Thank you for being here.
Hi, Maggie. Thanks for having me, inviting me, and I'm so excited we get to do this 2 days in a row. So
I know. So just to give a little bit of context to our listener, you invited me on your podcast yesterday, and I believe that our conversation was so powerful and so relatable as well to my audience. And that's the reason why I wanted to bring you on. So thank you for getting on this call like so quickly, just one day after. I still have
Yeah.
my cold getting in the way, but that's okay. The listeners will have to cope with that. But yeah, maybe let's start off there. Who are you? What are you doing? How do you help your people? Can you tell us a little bit about yourself so that our listeners get to know you?
Yeah, I feel like I have a lot to my story, but I'm Megan Hillukka. I have been married 13 years and I have 8 kids. Um, One who has passed away, who died almost 8 years ago. And kind of that whole thing has sparked me to what I do today because after she died, I had debilitating trauma and anxiety. And now today I help people get rid of anxiety and trauma for good. That's been my focus, and it's been really, really amazing when I've found something that works so well to be able to make such a difference for people. So I live in Minnesota, in the United States, and we just got done traveling the country for 2 years in a converted school bus.
Oh my
And
God.
now we're back to like quote unquote normal life in a house. We bought a house, and it's just like it's kind of been a transition back to like normal life. And what does normal life look like? Having a house and
Yeah,
being in one spot day to day. So that's just kind of a glimpse of, yeah.
I love that. And just on an unrelated topic, I love that you just traveled the country for 2 years. What has
It
been
was
like your,
incredible.
I can imagine, like what has been your biggest like takeaway or lesson, or what has that experience brought you? If you had to choose one of all of, because I'm sure there's many things,
One,
what would be like the biggest thing that, or the biggest impact?
I feel like the whole experience taught me that we really like we really can reach our dreams. That like I know it sounds kind of funny, but like it's possible. Like it was such a big dream that felt out of reach and impossible, and that we already did that now. like is kind of crazy. We already built a bus. We traveled for 2 years. We figured out how to do it. Like that's crazy. And the other
Yeah.
thing would just be spending so much time as a family was incredible.
Yeah, because I can imagine being on a bus for 2 years with your family. Some of us might freak out.
I've had that comment a time or two, and yes, it is a small space. It's 280 square feet for 9 people. But it it taught us so much. It taught
Yeah.
us so much, and I feel like my kids are so close and our family's so close because we had that special time together.
Well, thank you for sharing that. Thank you
Hmm.
so much. So I heard you say, and that's the reason why I wanted to bring you on the podcast and have this conversation, is because you're working with people to get over their anxiety, right? Um, so one of the things that singers particularly tend to experience is performance anxiety. Oh, and by the way, we talked about that yesterday. You used to sing in a choir as well, right?
Yes, I did. Long
So
time ago.
So tell me about that. Did you ever experience that fear of singing in front of other people as well? Is that something you're familiar with or not at all?
I would say I did do one solo one time, which was awful.
Ooh,
So
okay.
I I would never do it again. Like I told you on our call that I don't really feel like I'm a good singer. I didn't even know why I was the person to do it.
Uh-huh.
Um, so there was that, part of it where like I learned from you that I could get better at singing and
Uh-huh.
increase my skills. But I think yeah, when I did that solo for sure, like I don't even think my voice sounded anything like it normally does because I was so nervous. And then the The choir, I feel like when I was in like a group of people, it's not as scary. Like
Yeah.
you're singing together, nobody can hear you
Yeah.
specifically, so it's just fine.
Yeah. Exactly. And it's kind of like this protective mechanism of you're feeling
Yeah.
safe in your bubble of sound with all the
Yep.
others.
Yep.
Yeah, let's dive into that experience of singing that solo, because that's what many of the people that I work with
Hmm.
experience.
Yeah.
Whether that's singing in the shower and then someone comes home and then they stop singing because they're afraid of letting themselves be heard, or maybe that's even on stage, having the the passion and the willingness to share their singing, but still
Hmm.
having that fear. And many singers think that this is like not right, something that is broken within them. Because if they
Mm.
have the desire to perform, then why do they have this intense fear of it? It's like this paradox,
Mm.
right?
Hmm.
So you're helping people getting over fears. How exactly do you do that? Like, what would be the three things, according to you, that are necessary for clearing anxieties or fears?
Yes, I love this question and I love how you put it as because this a lot of times anxiety can be super confusing. Like I have this desire, I'm trying to do this thing. I don't understand why it's scary. I want to do it. I don't understand what's going on. And I want to just point to this really quick. It's part of my three things, but I if we think of it like there's kind of two different train tracks. And there's one where there's the conscious mind where you're logical, like this is what I want, this is what I want to do, this is where I want to go. Like I don't understand why I keep getting derailed and keep like not being able to do what I want to do.
Yeah.
And it's because one the conscious mind is on one train track and the unconscious mind is on another train track. And the unconscious mind is far more powerful than the conscious mind.
Yeah.
And it's going to, and I'll describe it as part of this three parts, but it will override everything you're trying to do in order to protect you. So it's not that it's working against you, but it's just on two different train tracks, and we got to get them on the same train track working together. So I'll describe that more. So the first part of the three things is um, awareness. So understanding how anxiety functions, why it's there, and how it works. A lot of people have a basic understanding of what's going on with anxiety, why it's there. But from this perspective with rapid resolution therapy, I feel like it completely shifted my entire life after, like, I dealt with anxiety on a daily basis, where now not at all. And
Hmm.
if it does start to pop up, I know exactly what to do. I know how to shut it off. Because I understand deeply why anxiety is there. So let's think of it this way, that we all have a scanner that's constantly scanning for data and information. And so when somebody, let's put it in terms of like somebody who's singing, their scanner is scanning for threat and danger. And we don't even need to know specifically what that is. It could be the people, it could be the sound of their voice, it could be afraid they're going to mess up. It doesn't really matter. If they have perceived a threat, this thing, the scanner, the only thing it cares about is keeping you alive.
Mm.
So it doesn't really care if you're happy, if you're sad, if you're enjoying yourself, if it's, any of that. It doesn't care at all. The only thing it cares about is, are you taking your next breath? And so it will override everything you're doing. So that's why, when somebody's like, well, this is what I'm trying to do. I don't get it. This thing is like a survival mechanism that will override every other system to make sure you're paying attention. So if it perceives a threat or reads danger from anything, then it will make sure you pay attention. And so that's where that fear comes from and the anxiety comes from. And so with rapid resolution therapy, when we bring awareness to that and understanding it, that's where you can start to then, like the next step is clearing. So clearing, let's think of that scanner as sometimes when it's scanning, it has like foggy glasses on it
Okay.
and it can't really see
Hmm.
clearly. So sometimes it's triggering the fear when there's no danger. And it's triggering the fear when there's actually not a threat. Like logically, somebody knows, like, I'm fine. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's happening. I'm totally fine. Why am I responding like this?
Hmm.
It's because this unconscious mind, the scanner that's looking for danger and threat, is like misreading data.
Right.
And then it's causing all of the fear, all of the anxiety that comes with that, um, in order to protect them. So clearing is, what I do with people is we clear that, we wipe the glasses clean so then the mind can see clearly, so they can see, oh, okay, there's no threat, there's no danger. And it's like, not only can they work with now their unconscious mind just more automatically gets it. So
Hmm.
it's like a lot of people will, let's think of it this way, that anxiety, fear is like a light bulb, a light.
Okay.
And a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, this is so uncomfortable. I'm just gonna like try cover it up with like a towel.
Hmm.
And they're always dealing with it over here at the light bulb. And what I do with people is we go to the light switch and we just shut it off. And
Mm.
when you shut it off, then there's nothing to deal with over here. It's just not even there. And it's so difficult for people to even comprehend that, because can feel like this is so much a part of who I am. This is so much a part of, like, this is just natural, a normal part of life. Well, yes, fear is a natural defense mechanism. However, when we let the mind know that this is a dysfunctional response, or it's turning on for nothing, there's no reason for it. And so letting it know that, it's like, oh, hey, thank you for letting me know. Let's get on the same page.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of people feel like their mind is working against them, but it's really not. It really wants to protect you. It really wants to work with you. And so then the third piece of what I'm talking about is communication. So learning how to communicate to your unconscious mind. A lot of people, it's like the unconscious mind is speaking in German and the conscious mind is speaking in Spanish.
Okay.
And
Very
they just
confusing.
can't communicate. And so that's why it can feel like that, like, what in the world? Why can't I? Why is my mind, why am I battling my mind? I'm constantly in this battle with my mind, fighting with this thing. It's like, well, let's just get you speaking the same language. And then it's actually quite easy when you can speak in the language that the unconscious mind understands. It wants to work with you. And so that's kind of the third piece of it, is then start communicating in ways that the unconscious mind understands.
Wow, this is amazing. So, just to recap so that I can wrap my head around it. Awareness is step number one. Then we have the clearing, which is the main work that you do, and then the communication. And I love the metaphor of the light, that you can put a towel over it or you can just go
Mm-hmm.
to the switch and switch it off.
Yeah,
So,
most people do the towel. And sorry, I don't want to
go
cut you
ahead.
off, but I would think of that as like all the coping mechanisms.
Right.
That's like everything people do to try to manage anxiety or like regulate their nervous system or calm themselves down. That's covering the light bulb up.
So, an example of that could be if someone is backstage, ready to go on stage, they're feeling that anxiety, and maybe they're coping by telling themselves, it's going to be all right, it's going to be all right, it's going to be all right. Like, would that be an example of the towel over the light?
It would be kind of, but also that's part of the communication. So a lot of people will say things like that where the unconscious mind doesn't understand it's going to be all right.
Okay.
So so it doesn't get that, oh, everything's going to be okay. Like for example, thinking I am safe, people will be like, oh, okay, I'm safe, I'm safe. Unconscious mind doesn't understand I am safe.
Yeah.
Like if you're sitting in your room and you're safe, are you thinking, oh, I'm so safe?
No, it's a
Oh,
feeling.
I'm just so safe. Right? And then like an animal that's just sitting there eating grass, is it thinking, oh, I'm just so safe? So unconscious mind doesn't understand that. And so it's not going to understand when we're thinking or saying, oh, I'm safe, I'm safe, I'm
Right.
safe. So it can't get on the same train track as you because it doesn't get that. So does that make sense? That's part of the
Yes, it does.
communication. And so when
And
you learn better communication skills, there's things like that I teach with people and work with people that they could say to themselves, but it's not, it's more talking to that scanner and
right.
letting that scanner know, hey, there's no threat, there's no danger, nothing needs to be done. Thank you for protecting me. Those kind of things.
So then, because that brings up so many questions for me. And I think,
Sorry.
no, 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 yeah, I'm totally on track with what you're saying. And I believe the singers listening to this love this as well. So if you're okay with it, I would love to
Oh,
dive
I'm totally
deeper
fine.
into
Yep.
this.
Go ahead.
How do you communicate then? How do you get those two parts on track so that if, for example, in that situation, a singer is ready to go on stage feeling that anxiety, how can you communicate to your subconscious mind that this is a safe thing to do? Does that make sense what I'm
So,
asking?
yeah, and from this perspective of rapid resolution therapy, it's not like totally a thing you do in isolation. So
Okay.
like it would be you have somebody who guides you through it or like a program that takes you through it. It's something that takes you through it rather than trying to understand it yourself because it's multi-level communication. And there's parts that you could learn that could be like, oh, okay, if I just say, nothing needs to be done, there's no threat, maybe that would help.
Yeah.
But it is multi-level communication. So when I'm working with somebody, I'm talking both to the conscious mind, to the unconscious mind at the same time.
Uh-huh.
And it's funny because people I've worked with will say, well, that wasn't anything new. Like I didn't learn anything new, but for some reason now it worked. And I'm like, that's because I was also talking to your subconscious mind. And there's so many layers to that talking to the subconscious mind, but a lot of it is through metaphors, stories, um, things that we understand logically that make sense, and the unconscious mind also gets it.
Hmm,
And then it's not applied to their situation directly, but through a story, and then suddenly the unconscious mind gets it and it's like, oh, if it works like that for this, then it works like that for this over here.
I see. I
And so
see.
it automatically applies it. And that's what's so incredible is like when you clear one anxiety or one fear, a lot of times it automatically clears up other fears and other anxieties. Like people that I work with, and like we clear one thing and then they're like, oh my gosh, my social anxiety is gone. Oh my gosh, I'm way more connected with my husband because that anxiety is gone. Oh my gosh, this relationship here is so much better because, and we didn't even talk about any of those things.
That's
We just cleared up the foggy scanner and the glasses, and suddenly everything else gets clear.
That's such a powerful tool. And the tool that you're talking about is rapid resolution therapy, right?
Mm-hmm.
RRT.
Yep.
Um, can you tell us a little bit more about that? Like what is it? Is it kind of a therapy thing? I mean, it has the word therapy in it, but like how is this different than other forms of therapy? And how like for someone who has never heard of RRT or rapid resolution therapy, give us like the lay of the lands.
It's, oh man. So rapid resolution therapy, like I said, it's multi-level communication. So it's talking to the conscious mind, the subconscious mind. It is created by Dr. John Connolly, who is a wizard. I don't know, wizard master at what he does. Like he is incredible. And I've been training under him. And it's it's been very difficult to describe because I went and got my first session done when I didn't even know what it was. I was just like, okay, let me try this out. And after I got done, I was like, I still don't know what it is, but it worked. I don't know what happened. And a lot of people say that, like, I don't know what we did. It didn't feel like we did much, but for some reason it worked. And
Okay.
that's what's so incredible about it. It's like, we don't, it's not painful. It's quick. It's mostly in one session, two sessions. Um, it's easy, it's light. A lot of times we're laughing. It's fun. But it's a lot of using stories. It's people will ask if it's hypnosis. It's not technically hypnosis. It could be called clinical hypnosis, but it's um, when I do processes with people, and when they're doing the process, they're totally awake the whole time. Like I'm not, it's not hypnosis in the same way that a lot of people think. And in a nutshell, everything you think currently is the opposite of that.
Okay.
Like any sort of therapy modality, hypnosis, mindfulness practices, it's like complete opposite of everything, which, as somebody going in who was like into tapping, meditation, breath work, which I still enjoy, I think they're useful, but those were like my coping mechanisms. Then I went and learned rapid resolution therapy, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what in the world? Like, you know, all these things are kind of useless. They're not now. I don't think so, but it was just kind of like, all, I don't know. He turns everything on its head, and it's the
Amazing.
opposite, and it works. It's just amazing.
It sounds like this magical pill that everyone is looking for.
I know when people are like, I don't believe you. I don't believe you that that works so good. And I'm like, I know, I get it. And it does sound like a magical pill, and it kind of is. It's
Uh-huh.
amazing.
And so how would that apply? So because you were talking about the coping mechanism and also the metaphor of the light bulb where
Mm-hmm.
you want to like switch off at the switch.
Yep.
I guess that's a beautiful metaphor of going to the root of the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us a little bit more like about how is clearing the root the fastest way into healing all of those things?
Um, because if you think of it, like this is kind of another metaphor, but like if there's sound coming out of a speaker, and somebody wants to change the music and they keep looking at the speaker. You're like, hey, no, let's go to where the music's coming from. So we go to the place. So we think of that scanner, that's where the whole thing starts. The
Uh-huh.
whole mechanism of fear, of anxiety, that like it's like the, the starting point. And so if we go to the root and we go to that part and that's turned off, how can any of that other stuff happen? It
Right.
can't. Um, I guess another part of rapid resolution therapy is the perspective that it's not what's happening around us, it's not the thing, but the way mind is processing information. And so that's why two people who experience the same exact thing could walk away with different, one could be anxious and one not. And
Mm-hmm.
so a lot of people will be like, oh, well, it's because I'm on stage or because I'm singing in front of people or because of, these reasons. And we look at it as the outside doesn't really have anything to do with it. It's the way mind is processing that data. And when we make an impact there, that's when everything can change from there.
I
Does that make
love
sense?
that. Yes. So it's about
Yeah.
how you're perceiving things, not necessarily the meaning that you're giving something. I mean, no,
Um,
that is related because that's how you perceive things.
yeah.
Um,
It's
so
not the thing that's happening.
right. So
Yeah.
an example would be two singers. One see the stage as a threat and something that is dangerous because maybe they've been laughed at in the past,
Mm-hmm.
while the other singer sees it as their ultimate piece of freedom where they can express themselves, for
Yeah.
example. That's how
Yeah.
they see the thing. And it's different for both of them, but the actual situation is the same. Am I
Yes,
following?
that's exactly it. And so one person's going to be in their element, excited, joyful, and one person's going to be anxious, nervous,
Yes.
fearful, not even wanting to go up there, right?
Uh-huh.
And
Yeah.
it could be normal, it could be like, yeah, okay, I feel some sensations when I'm going up. But another part of what we talk about is like sensation, like who cares? Who cares if you feel sensations in your body? Like it doesn't matter. And one quote I love from Dr. John Connolly is the more it's something to this effect that the people who are trying to like reaching for comfort, they tend to be more uncomfortable. And the people who lean into discomfort, they actually tend to be more comfortable. So
Interesting.
yeah. So it's not necessarily about feeling, you know, no sensations or
Mhm.
anything in your body. It's about just like leaning into it and like, okay, who cares if I have, who cares if my heart's pounding? That's not a big deal. My heart pounds all day, every day. It's just pounding a little faster right now.
I love that. So that's the mindset shift that you can start to create within yourself to get over that anxiety then eventually.
Yeah.
I mean, would that be because then I'm wondering like I follow you, I think, with the theory and like how all of this connects together. I'm thinking, are there any ways to put that RRT philosophy into practice like by oneself? Like, is there a tool or a practice that someone can go through in order to find that release of anxiety? Does that make sense what I'm asking?
Um,
Or is it really part of a whole bigger process?
I would say it's part of a whole bigger process. It because it involves, when I work with somebody, it's hour, 2 hours long of
Mm.
working and talking and communicating and doing things. So it's and like I want to give something that would be of value. So like one thing somebody could try is just taking that communication to their scanner. If they think of it that they have this scanner and say there is no threat, there is no danger. Um, the thing is that it works even better if there's already been these stories, these metaphors, this communication in place to the subconscious mind that it understands what you're saying, fully. So, um, it is kind of like Dr. John Connolly always says it's not like a self-help tool. It's like a process that you would work with somebody or through something with somebody.
Yes. Yes. Beautiful. And so those are RT, I guess, do you call like therapists? Would you say that you're in rapid resolution therapy therapist,
No, we
trainer?
call them either practitioners or specialists or facilitators.
Okay. How, if someone is listening to this episode and they're like, okay, I need to talk to someone who can guide me through this process,
Mm-hmm.
how would that person even start? Like, is there a website that we can go to, or even working with you? I mean, do you
Mm-hmm.
work with specific type of people? Do you also work with singers, for example, or
Mm-hmm.
like,
Yeah, I tend to focus on anxiety and trauma. And I definitely work with people. And I have a program coming out that is for anxiety and trauma, and it doesn't have to be for, like I said earlier, it's not even anything specific. Anxiety all comes from the same thing. Mind is reading a threat. And so this program will work for any type of anxiety, but that's not, that's, one piece. I'm definitely happy to do that. But if somebody wants to work with, there's tons of rapid resolution specialists, facilitators. If you go to rapid resolution therapy, I wonder if it's .org. If you search rapid resolution therapy, you'll
yeah,
easily be able to find it.
and I'll link
And
to it in the show notes. Yeah.
there's specialists who have had I think like 200 hours or 250 hours of training, and they've taken exams and stuff, that kind of stuff. And then there's facilitators who are in the, like, if you go to, you can find them like in the, like, which state they're in. And they've had
Okay.
over 100 hours of training, which I'm in there, and I'm almost close to the specialist um,
Ooh,
level. But yes, so you can go there and find people too.
amazing. Thank you for sharing that. I feel like this is it a pretty new like technique, would you say, or has this been around for years and years?
He's done it for years. I know some people like in the membership and who are part of the community have been training with him for like 20 years.
Wow.
But I do think it's maybe the marketing and the messaging has gotten out more
Mhm.
recently. Um, and that's like how I came to know about it. I was like, what is this thing that promises to shut my anxiety off like a light switch? What is that
Yeah,
thing? I
I
need to
know.
try it. And then
Yeah.
I tried it and it worked. I'm like, oh, okay. I need to get trained in this thing. So,
I
yeah.
It's such a, I mean, it sounds so amazing. And I appreciate that you're sharing your experience with it, because I think for some of us, when hearing it or when reading about this, it might sound too good to be true, but hearing it
Mm-hmm.
from an actual person having gone through anxiety and trauma and releasing all of that,
Mm-hmm.
it really helps to put everything into perspective. So thank you so much
Yeah.
for coming on and sharing all of that. Um, yeah. So anything else that you would like to add to this conversation? I feel like we've covered so many things, even those three things for clearing it, the awareness and then the clearing and then the communication. Just having awareness about that
Mm-hmm.
already makes so much like possible. It's a whole different
Mm-hmm.
way of looking at how to go about our fears really as people, not only as
Mm-hmm.
singers.
Yeah.
Anything else that you would like to add to make this conversation feel complete for yourself?
The one thing that I tell my clients, which I'll tell you now here, is, which I think is really amazing, is people who are really smart tend to want to figure out where the anxiety is coming from. What's the reason? What's the thing? Like,
Yeah.
let me, if I'm feeling anxious, oh, why am I anxious? What's going on? That, and what's really amazing about this is we actually don't need to know any of that. We don't
Okay.
need to know any reason what's going on. The only thing we need to know is my mind or that scanner has perceived a threat. And we don't even need to know what it is. We just tell that mind, hey, there's no threat. There's no danger. There's nothing that needs to be done. So, hello, let's go on with our merry way. So that has been life changing for me. when I got my first session and I realized that, like, I would spend days wondering, why am I anxious today? What's going on? What happened that I'm anxious? I don't understand. Now I'm just like, oh, my mind is reading a threat. Okay. Like, let's shut that off. There's no threat. Thank you.
That is so powerful, though, that you can let it go so easily. Like
Mhm.
awareness of, okay, I'm seeing a threat, my mind is seeing a threat, and there's no threat. So I'll
Yeah.
let it go instead of
Yeah.
analyzing the situation. Where is this coming from?
Yeah.
What could be the trigger? Such an interesting and powerful distinction. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Where can people connect with you if they want to learn more about this and the way that you work and if they want to get to know you?
Yeah. You can always find me at meganhillukka.com, which is my website.
I'll link
I
to
have
it.
a podcast, the Joyful Mom podcast, and then I have a website, Get Rid of Anxiety for Good, and that's where I always offer like free trainings, free videos, free workshops. So whatever's going on at the moment, you can find there at Get Rid of Anxiety for Good. So then you can learn more, you can dive deeper into that, whatever.
That's so beautiful work that you're doing. I'll definitely link to all those things in the show notes so that our listener can go and check that out. And yeah, so many. My mind is open right now. So thank
I love it.
you for sharing this. This was so valuable. I hope you enjoyed it as well.
It was
But
so
yeah,
fun.
thank you so much for spending this time together.
Thanks for having me. I enjoyed myself.